I don't normally do this, but I'm going to ask the obvious question because I think it's a super, super interesting story. Like, what was the first point of connection? How did Ian and Jane, how did you two learn about the story of Geraldine, and what was the kind of process for you to start making a film?
It was in early 2020, wasn't it? We were finishing off a film with a super close friend of ours, a director and producer, Anna Hilda in Reykjavik. And we were over there doing the grade and the mix, and she took us out for dinner one night and invited Emilíana. We knew her music, but we'd not met. And over dinner, firstly, we just got on like a house on fire. It was, we clicked straight away. But she's also just, as you've just witnessed, an incredibly spellbinding storyteller. And you'd come back from London from performing at Geraldine's memorial, where afterwards Zoe had found this box of letters. And you didn't know what you were going to do with it, really. You'd written one song at that point to sort of cheer Zoe up. But the stories were, some of the time I didn't know what you were going on about, but a lot of the time it was just the most incredible. There's what in there? There's who? What? It just sounded so full of potential. And then maybe 3 years later it came, that was a chance encounter. That sort of, but I remember the kind of power of that conversation. Yeah.
And in the meantime, Emilíana, you decided to create a whole album. It's not just one song, but a whole album of songs.
Yeah, it took a while to decide it. I think because I lived in Iceland and I was going back and forth to work with Simon. And when this happened, we did this one song. And then I came back 1.5 months later, and we were always straight back to the box, straight back to the letters. And then it just became a real obsession. And I couldn't really, it's just, I can't really explain it except that it's like a current that kept pulling all of us really in this wherever direction. And then there was more letters, more characters, more stories. And I guess my father was a history nerd, and I've always been interested in people and their stories. And so this was just like a big treasure for me. And also to work with, we're at an age where we're losing our parents. And I had lost my father 1 month after she lost her mom. And then Simon also very few months later. So I think it was a kind of also this cathartic thing, because losing a parent is an extremely lonely experience, even though we all go through it. And so I think it was something that pulled it on as well, like a little ode to our histories and what people leave behind.
And we should probably explain, Zoe, who's Geraldine's daughter, her husband Simon is your musical collaborator, and that's the kind of start. But then the whole project seems to be connections between people who sort of came together to create the final thing. Is that fair to say?
It's very fair to say, yeah. I mean, I've never been involved in a project, I don't think, that felt so much like it was kind of, the project was somehow calling the shots. And I don't really mean in a sort of very cosmic way, but there was just something about this project, and I think it's sort of testament in a way to Geraldine, I think very much in her spirit. People just were up for it. People were just up for getting involved and doing things, and then all of these sort of just bizarre connections began to sort of unravel, and things began to kind of present themselves. So, excuse me, so yeah, everyone sort of has a story in a way within everyone involved in the film kind of has their story of where they slot in, and it just gets madder and madder.
And Caroline, what was your story? What was your?
Well, my connection was really through Ian and Jane, who I've worked with quite a few times before, and they've become friends, and they were telling me about this project, which sounded really amazing. But I was really captivated by this idea that there was this kind of archive of correspondence, but it was only one-sided. And that, to me, was really interesting, that there was this kind of, this person that they were suggesting that I might play, that we had fragments, we had ideas based on the letters, but then we also had this fantastic, they, told me about Zoe. I'd known Zoe just a little bit at that point. I hadn't really got to know her properly. And, Zoe would be producing this. This was her mum. It was like, wow, it's that I've never been offered such a unique and an amazing challenge, really. So that was kind of where I sort of heard about it, and they asked me if I was interested, and I was really intrigued. And then, you read the script that you and Stuart and Jane put together, and it was just like this evocation of this incredibly magnetic, fascinating person, and I just wanted to get involved. Yeah.
I'm glad we came across as quite casual, because in our minds there was nobody else to play it. I mean, it was quite a high stakes conversation, really. It was always you. You've been a real muse for us. But we also knew that because you make your own films, we knew you'd understand the setup and the way we were going to have to make this. And we knew that because, like us, you're obsessed with music, we knew that you'd know instinctively how to work with a musician or how to work with a non-actor, to enable the kind of... There's always an element in our work that's semi-scripted or unscripted, improvised, but it takes a lot of generosity, I think, to enable that to happen really well. And yeah, she was...
I think because I'm not an actor at all. And I've never really understood until then when actors talk about, when somebody holds you up, when an actor holds you, because I definitely couldn't have done it without you. But our first scenes was like, because I knew Geraldine a bit, and when I saw her as her, it was like, oh my God, I'm just looking at Geraldine. And so when we were doing our first scene, I was just like, she's like, no, you have to say something. And I'm like, and I was like, oh, completely forgetting. I was just like, wow, you're amazing.
No, it's because you're a natural performer and a brilliant storyteller, and there was nothing to do. You just had to keep going, and it was the easiest thing in the world for you. You're just so magnetic.
Thank you.
Yeah,
but it
truly.
really wasn't.
Yeah.
I was like chasing myself the whole time.
Oversharing.
Oversharing. I'm having PR, lessons.
And I'm just about to throw it open to the audience, but one more question. Geraldine herself in it, she remains quite elusive, right? She's obviously Caroline's representing her, but I think she's used quite economically.
Yeah.
And also, I think sometimes Emilíana is sort of channeling a presence. And was that a really specific decision?
It was, yeah. I mean, there was a very definite way that we wanted to make this film, and I think, clearly it's a story that could have been told in lots of different ways. And there's certainly, I'm sure, a very sort of journalistic take on, you can imagine trying to track down these men, and they were all men that these letters were from, trying to speak to some of them, digging into Geraldine's life. Lots of her friends and family are still around, and we could have, excavated a life in that way. But I think for us, as a sort of creative project, what felt really important was the Geraldine that we wanted to put on screen was the Geraldine that was kind of the one that lived in Emilíana's imagination.
Right.
So in the same way that those letters had inspired the creative project of making the album, we wanted to kind of spark from the same source, if you like, and take that material and work with that. So there's never really, there's very flimsy biographical information you get in this film, and it's really not about that. It's the Geraldine that lives up here.
Yeah.
Great question. It was the first thing we did. I mean, the songs were the kind of tent poles that we could build the film from. So we, In and I just put them in the order we thought they fitted in, and I don't know that it ever changed. I can't think of one. Let's Keep Dancing kept moving around, but I think everything else found its place really quickly, and we knew which ones we wanted to group. But the big thing was that we needed the shape of the songs to change, because they often the letters elements, the kind of references to the letters are inside the middle of the album songs, and we needed to kind of bring them out. And I think that really early exercise where we did those embarrassing cut and shut edits of
We
these
promised
beautiful
never to talk
songs,
of
yeah,
ever again. Yeah,
and then
those.
sent them to Simon. We didn't send them anywhere near you. Sent them to Simon.
No.
Sent them to Simon, and he was like, "Oh, I get what you're doing here," and started to do adaptations and rearrangements of them, and that just worked really, really well. And that relationship is that us and Simon were we worked all the way through together, and not only did he co-write all of the songs, but he scored the whole film as well. So and I love the score in this film. I think it brings a tone and a lightness and it sits back, but it's so kind of present. Yeah, it's lovely.
Tickly.
Yeah.
Musical films, not a huge amount, but films that music plays an important part in.
And I guess Stop
I guess.
Making Sense, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the biggest sort of direct influence on the whole project, I mean, as you've seen, it's a really hard film to describe. So I generally just don't bother anymore. Because I don't think it's a hard film to watch, but it's a really hard film to describe. And even just talking between the group of us as the project was evolving was sort of quite difficult, because you end up realising you just sound mad. And then this happens, and then we'll get a choreographer and we'll do... And the thing that we found that gave us a way of kind of looking at something together and going, look at this, was The Strange World of Gurney Slade.
Oh, right.
So someone's obviously seen it. And if you see it, it sort of makes a lot of sense. But if you haven't seen it, I think they're now all on YouTube, so I would highly recommend tracking them down. It's a show that Anthony Newley made in 1960 for television, and there's 6 episodes, and it's still, one of the most contemporary viewing experiences. Everything about it is just so postmodern, and the kind of creativity is just spilling from the screen. So there was so much of that we were able to kind of show to Emilíana and say, look, he walks off the set and then he talks to the cameraman and then he goes back and carries on the scene. Look, we can do crazy things like that. So that was probably the most overt influence, I think.
They are testament to the other extraordinary Miss Flower, Zoe. This whole film was made on love and favours and everybody bending over backwards to help out. And Zoe is amazing. She's worked as a successful film publicist for many, many years. So Alice Lowe and Richard Ayoade, she's done their films. So it was a mixture of kind of, let's read the letters, who would it really suit, and then who do we know will generously give us their time. It was it was amazing, and we got everybody that we really wanted. It was just finding those. We didn't want them to become the men or to try and act as those characters. There needed to be that little distance of the act of reading, that, they're great.
But the moment you started hearing those letters in those voices, I think it became, like Caroline, almost non-negotiable. The moment you read a letter that says, and then I thought of you as a wine.
Yeah.
You think,
Yeah.
it's got to be Richard.
Yeah, I think weirdly, getting Reggie right was the hardest.
Yeah.
And I think Mark Monero is amazing. I mean, that because he meant the most to Geraldine, and it felt like you needed that character that you could absolutely kind of connect with. And I think similarly with Angus, it was finding a character that would sit well with you because you were playing both sides of the story. Those two amazing kind of monologues, yeah.
So talking of, I was earlier about the film almost starting to kind of make itself in a way. So Angus Sampson, I'm going to try and get this right so we can shout if I get it wrong. Angus, growing up in Australia, was best friends with Paddy's son. Paddy, Geraldine's brother, who the letter that Angus reads was written to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those things where it's like, and it doesn't really matter, but just what a weird kind of connection to come out of.
I just want to ask about the choreography, because that's the other thing. Because I watched this back, quite a while ago now, actually. But that's the thing that I remember a lot, is the movement and the kind of the fluidity and the way that it.
Thank you. The worst. Thanks so much.
Well, it sort of brings everything together. It's like the glue that brings the music and the performance together.
And I think there's two sides to it because everything's going directly down the camera. Directly, you're the audience that we're making this for, not an audience in the room, which is often the case with music films or performance films. I think there were almost two choreographers. There's Kate Coyne, who you see in the film again and again. It was our dream to work with her, and again, incredible serendipity that we'd met on a discussion about a Michael Clarke film when she was running his company years and years and years ago, and just absolutely loved her and had researched her as a dancer and thought she was amazing, and then needed those stage hands. We were looking to cast them, and we're like, right, okay, who do we know? And so he said, oh yeah, I know a dancer, and heart sinks. You're thinking, oh, do you? Like, not any good. And turns out that as a 16-year-old, Zoe worked with Kate Coyne in the Issey Miyake shop in London for years and years, and had stayed lifelong friends. And wow. So it's been our first opportunity to work with Kate, and she's never getting rid of us. Sorry, Kate. But also, I think, on the other side of that, we couldn't have made this film without our cinematographer, Eric Wilson, who we've kind of practiced this a few times. We went into a cave with Jarvis Cocker.
Yeah, I remember that.
Just after lockdown, where we did 5 songs in one day, and had been desperate to do these kind of in-between song bits, but we just did not have the time. Very similar setup, 3 cameras, a kind of very much made as almost theatre. And yeah, I mean, that he keeps allowing us to do stuff like this is incredible. And I think there's something about the way he moves the camera. Yeah, I mean, it reduced me to tears almost again tonight. The movement between the two of you during Golden Thread, with the use of something just simple as matching mirrors back to back, and God, just everything is in there. The sort of the stillness of it, the patience of it, the shots hold for so long, the kind of it's phenomenal. It's we're lucky. Yeah, I mean, Caroline, how did we all checked in with? I mean, Zoe, what a woman! Like, produced the film, but had to be the daughter all the way through. Still, you know, a grieving daughter and a friend and a facilitator. I mean, but you it rested on your shoulders, really. How did you find it?
Well, Zoe is incredibly generous, and just the very fact that the album had happened, I could see that it was like this amazing amount of trust and a real testament to a friendship that, you know, that you were brave enough to offer that as a gift, and that, you know, and Zoe sort of accepted that, and then it sort of turned into this absolutely beautiful testament to her mum. And so already the foundations were laid about, you know, the rules and the letters and the magic sort of Pandora's box, if you like, this very powerful object.
Oh, there were those voicemails.
Yes, and then the voicemails. And then Zoe sent me this kind of clutch of really absolutely hilarious voicemails from her mum, where that was like the access point for me. It was like I could really hear her character and her kind of just beautiful warmth and her relationship with Zoe. And she was saying things like, Zoe, could you bring me up some more toast for my egg? Because I've only got a couple of pieces. Or, you know, maybe she'd say, is that who's at the door, Zoe? Because she was upstairs. She wasn't well at this point, was she? And Zoe was downstairs, and she was talking about the dog and have you fed Reggie? And, you know, this whole sort of patchwork of their lives, and just a sort of lovely, very warm, fabulous mum. And that really kind of, you know, and then everything else was just checking with Zoe and you, and also Simon. Simon was absolutely amazing talking to me about Geraldine. Now and again, he'd just very gently sort of take me away, and sometimes she would do this, and sometimes she'd, you know, and there was a lot of love and generosity.